What's happening, everybody? On today's show, we're going to attempt to answer the question, who is the best quarterback in the SEC heading into 2024? And a few SEC teams punch their ticket to Omaha, while a few others head home. Locked on SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what is happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Remember, we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And shout out to our everydayers. All right, I want to dive into this because, look, we're starting to get ever so close to the 2023 football season. And Greg McElroy on his Always College Football show this past week had some interesting comments about Jayden Daniels from LSU. He said the best quarterback returning in the SEC is Jayden Daniels. He said if you look across the board, he's got everything that you could want. And now another year in that system, look out. Now, this got me thinking. Who is the best quarterback in the SEC? You know, just could be returning. Keep in mind, we've got some newcomers as well. So I kind of wanted to dive into the numbers to take a look at, how do we determine this? Because is it just based on stats? Is it win-loss record? Is it production? What is it that will determine this? So I figure we run through a few of the guys and kind of kick this around. But first, we'll start with Mississippi State's Will Rogers. He has been the starter for 3 seasons in Starkville. If you remember, he took over for KJ Costello just a few games into his freshman year. He is thrown for over 10,600 career yards with 82 passing touchdowns. It is hard to dispute those numbers. Nobody else is really close to those numbers. The biggest problem is Mike Leach, God rest his soul, is gone. And the air raid attack going to be very different this year. Kevin Barbay's coming in to take over that offense. You look at Will Rogers' record as a starter, 19-13 as a starter. But how different will that offense look? And does it suit him more? Having a balanced run attack, maybe a more aggressive, tougher defense. Maybe Will Rogers doesn't have to put up those gaudy stats. But at the end of the day, I feel like the win-loss record is what you kind of have to lean on here, and Rodgers being just 19-13 as a starter. Don't know if I would call him the best quarterback heading into next season, but he's certainly up there. He's certainly in the conversation. Next up, we discuss LSU's Jayden Daniels. 1 year as the starter at LSU last year. He goes 10-3 in his first season in the SEC. He has thrown for close to 9,000 yards in his career with 49 passing touchdowns. Has rushed for 2,100 yards with 24 more rushing touchdowns. And in Arizona State, he went 18-11 there. Started his first game as a true freshman. So he's 28-14 overall as a starter. It's a really good win-loss record. Now, he's got Mike Denbrock back as his OC. The question is, can he now take his game to another level? Is there an even bigger step he can take? Because you go back and look at some of those games last year, like the Arkansas game and maybe the A&M game, just a little hesitant on throwing the football. If he lets loose and has that confidence in his receivers this year, Jayden Daniels could certainly take that to another level. So he's got the edge and win-loss record on Will Rogers. And again, he's got the rushing total, makes him that real dual threat, dangerous quarterback. But again, when I hear Greg McElroy say he's the best returning starter in the SEC, I take a step back and say, is he? Because, again, what Will Rogers has done. And what about this next guy we're going to throw out there? Arkansas's KJ Jefferson. Another guy going into his third season as a starter. Very productive in his time at Fayetteville. Over 5,800 passing yards, 48 touchdown passes, over 1,400 rushing yards with 19 rushing touchdowns. He is 16-9 as a starter. And very interesting with Dan Enos taking over as the new OC for the departed Kendall Briles. We know Enos runs a pro-style offense, wants to use the tight ends a lot more. Arkansas's got a tough schedule. but KJ should put up some big numbers this year. And again, does he elevate his game with a more, quarterback-friendly system that Dan Enos is going to run, a little bit more pro style? What will that look like for KJ Jefferson? I've got two other guys in this category. We've got Spencer Rattler from South Carolina. His first year with the Gamecocks was an up-and-down roller coaster. He had some very impressive wins at the back end with wins over Tennessee and Clemson. He has over 7,600 career passing yards with 58 touchdowns, 12 rushing touchdowns. Now, a lot of those stats came from his time at Oklahoma, and obviously when he started at Oklahoma, he was very good. He's 22-7 as a starter overall. Now he has Dole Loggins as his OC, guy who was handpicked by Shane Beamer. Remember, there were a lot of big names out there on the OC front that South Carolina brought in. This is who they bring in. They bring in Loggins from Arkansas, and the question is, how much better can Spencer Rattler get this year? Keep in mind, he's got Juice Wells back. He's got some weapons back. Can Spencer Rattler take that big leap forward and be the best quarterback in the SEC this year? One more guy we put in this category. I've got Kentucky's Devin Leary. He's a guy who comes to Lexington following 4 seasons at NC State. Some believed he was the best quarterback in the transfer portal. 6,800 passing yards with 62 passing touchdowns. His best year, of course, was 2021, where he had 35 touchdown passes that 1 year. Only thing that put him in this category for me, Kentucky brings back Liam Cohen as OC. They seem to have fixed their offensive line problems with a bunch of transfers. And he's got some weapons with Tavion Robinson, Dane Key, Berrien Brown back, Jordan Dingle back at tight end. That's Kentucky's 4 leading pass catchers from a year ago. They're all back. So the stage is set for Devin Leary to have a monster season. And this may sound blasphemous. I think he should put up better numbers this year than Will Levis did last season statistically. So Devin Leary has a chance to be in this category. So the upper echelon, I've got Will Rogers, Jayden Daniels, KJ Jefferson, Spencer Rattler, and Devin Leary. One of those guys, I think, is the best, sets up as the best quarterback going into this season. Who will it be at the end of the year? Well, there's some wild cards that can throw a wrench into the mix. So let's run through the wild cards. I got Tennessee's Joe Milton. Great performance in the bowl win over Clemson. Has mostly played in backup duty. Started a couple games at Michigan back in 2020. 3 seasons in Ann Arbor. 2 seasons so far in Knoxville. He's 23 years old, so he's seen a lot. 2,500 career passing yards with 17 touchdown passes. Could be primed for that big season in Josh Heupel's system post Hendon Hooker. But a lot of that's on Joe. Does he develop himself and take that next step forward in his development? Georgia's Carson Beck. He is the ultimate wild card in this mix. As good as Stetson Bennett was, some believe Beck is even more talented than Bennett was when it comes to arm strength and letting it fly. He's surrounded by ridiculous weapons everywhere. The schedule sets up super easy for Georgia, and it seems like Mike Bobo is going to pick up right where Todd Monken left off in play calling and being aggressive. He's got just under 500 career passing yards, 6 career touchdown passes. But if you're looking for a dark horse Heisman candidate, I think it's Carson Beck. You check out his weapons: Brock Bowers, Ladd McConkey. You had Dominic Lovett and Rara Thomas through the portal, Arian Smith, Kendall Milton. I would not be surprised if Carson Beck leads the SEC in passing at some point this year. And maybe when it's all said and done, we're looking back and saying, wow, Carson Beck was maybe the guy we weren't talking enough about when we talk about the KJ Jeffersons, Jayden Daniels, and all those guys. Another guy in my wild card, I've got Peyton Thorne from Auburn, just coming over from Michigan State. Very productive as a starter, threw for over 6,500 passing yards, 49 touchdown passes, went 16-10 as a starter. Runs when he has to, 270 career rushing yards with 6 rushing touchdowns. We know Hugh Freeze's offense commands a lot of the quarterback. You have tempo. You have to recognize the zone blitz. And this is a guy who's entering his 4th season of college ball. So he's got the smarts to learn this system with Phil Montgomery as his OC. And Thorne could surprise a lot of us this year. He's going to have to develop chemistry quick with a lot of those new pieces at Auburn. But if it all clicks, Peyton Thorne could be one of those guys we're talking about as one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC. The Ole Miss guys I bunched together, Jackson Dart and Spencer Sanders. Look, 2 guys who played a good bit of football. Dart with his season at USC and then a year at Ole Miss, 4,300 career passing yards, 29 touchdown passes. Also had 600 yards rushing. Don't forget, Jackson Dart's got some wheels he can use. But Spencer Sanders, he's the most seasoned of almost all these guys. 9,500 passing yards, 67 passing touchdowns, was a 4-year starter, almost 2,000 yards rushing with 18 rushing touchdowns at Oklahoma State. I just keep thinking Spencer Sanders in that Lane Kiffin system is going to put up some monster numbers. We'll see who wins the job. Dart was 6th in the conference for most passing yards a year ago, but would not be surprised if whoever wins this job finishes top 4 in the conference in passing yards. Don't know if they'll lead the conference in passing, but certainly a possibility. And then lastly, the guys I don't think are in the conversation yet, the Alabama guys, whether it's Tyler Buckner, Ty Simpson, or Jalen Milroe. I think that guy can be very productive, win a lot of games, but will he make a case for being the best quarterback in the SEC? I don't think so. If Bama is successful this year, I think it's because the run game's dominant, the defense is dominant, the quarterback play is good to pretty good. Graham Mertz at Florida, 4-year player at Wisconsin's got over 5,400 passing yards, 38 passing touchdowns. But if he's going to be successful at Florida, it's because of the dominant run game. I think Graham Mertz will rank near the bottom of the conference in stats, like the lower tier. Another guy, Brady Cook at Missouri, 3,100 passing yards, 17 passing touchdowns in his career. Had some decent games last year at Mizzou, but he loses Dominic Lovett. It's going to need to lean on Luther Burden a lot. I don't think Brady Cook will rank in the top half of SEC quarterbacks. A.J. Swan at Vandy, he was thrown to the fire last year as a true freshman, threw for 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns. But I don't think Vandy has the weapons yet and a brutal schedule. I think A.J. Swan ranks in the lower tier. And then Connor Wegman at A&M. How quickly can the Bobby Petrino effect have on Wegman? Wegman had some nice moments as a true freshman last year, threw for almost 900 yards and 8 touchdowns, no picks. He was a big-time recruit, 5-star, number 3 quarterback in the nation. Still battling Max Johnson. And Max Johnson's a guy who's got a ton of experience from his years at LSU, 4,400 passing yards, 38 touchdowns. But I don't think whoever wins the St. M job, I don't think either guy's going to rank in the top half of the SEC in passing. Maybe it's a little disrespectful to the Aggies, but that's where I've got Wegman at the moment. And so there we have it. I want to answer the question, who's the best quarterback in the SEC heading into 2024? I might lean with Greg McElroy and say Jayden Daniels. I would not disagree with it. Somebody wanted to say Will Rogers, or Arkansas fans wanted to say KJ Jefferson. And again, I think there is a argument to be made for Devin Leary coming in, even though he has not taken a snap yet at Kentucky. I think there's a case to be made for him. And Spencer Rattler, again, could make a case for him for what he did at Oklahoma. And of course, the good moments last year at South Carolina. Can't ignore the bad, but I think everybody kind of had their bad moments at times last year in the SEC. But I will stick with Jayden Daniels as my 1A, Will Rogers is my 1B on who's the best quarterback in the SEC heading next year. No disrespect to KJ Jefferson. I may change my answer by the time the summer ends, but there you have it. That is the question we wanted to post today. Who's the best quarterback in the SEC? Thank you guys so much for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, we're going to talk about some of the teams who punched their tickets to Omaha. That is coming your way in just a second. But first, I want to remind you guys, this episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Make a fast break over to FanDuel, of course, throughout these NBA playoffs, because right now new customers can get that no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That is $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Great promotions going on every day. Safe and secure, easy-to-use app. You can get paid instantly, and there is no better place to bet on all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Get that no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. FanDuel.com/lockedon. They've got all the MLB action up there as well. FanDuel, they are the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Going along here, Locked On SEC. You want to switch gears a little bit over to the baseball side of things as a couple of teams punching their tickets to Omaha. So we'll touch a little bit on baseball, and then we'll bounce back to football for a few things as well. But let's dive into it. Let's do it. Let's go around the conference.
Boots out to the right. Makes the handoff. What a catch!
Around the conference.
And we start with a couple of teams punching their tickets to Omaha. We start first with the Florida Gators as Hurston Waldrop turned in one of the most dominant pitching performances in Florida's NCAA tournament history on Saturday with a win over South Carolina to help the Gators advance to the College World Series. South Carolina coach Mark Kingston said, "We ran into a buzzsaw. We had no answers. Nobody would have had answers for him today. And one of the best pitching performances in school history. Waldrop threw 8 shutout innings in Florida's 4-0 victory over the Gamecocks to sweep the best-of-3 Super Regional. He only allowed 3 hits, walked 2, struck out 13 in a 117-pitch outing that drew his family and friends onto the field afterwards, taking pictures. And congrats to the Florida Gators and Kevin O'Sullivan. They are back in Omaha, packing their bags as we speak. As for South Carolina, look, they've waited 11 years to get back to Omaha since those Ray Tanner days. They're going to have to wait a little longer. But Mark Kingston's group had a great season, just falling short in the Super Regional in Gainesville. Their 42-21 record is the best they've done under Mark Kingston. First 41 season since 2016. So the future does look bright for South Carolina. They just cooled off at the wrong time. Meanwhile, over in Baton Rouge, LSU knocked off Kentucky in their Super Regional. They had a lengthy weather delay on Saturday, despite, well, no rain. They finally got underway. Originally, it was a 2 p.m. start. First pitch Saturday night was just after 9 p.m. Central. And Paul Skeens, he dominated the Wildcats. LSU shut out Kentucky Saturday night 14-0 as Skeens went 7 2/3 innings, allowing no runs off 4 hits with 9 strikeouts. And then on Sunday, Kentucky, they were able to get their bats going a little bit. They hit a couple of home runs off of Ty Floyd, but it was LSU's bats that got going, scoring 5 runs off Austin Strickland. And LSU went on to win it 8-3 Sunday night, punching their ticket to Omaha. Kentucky, they finished the regular season with a 36-17 record, 16-14 in the SEC, the best mark since Nick Mingione's first season in 2017. So, again, future looks bright there for Kentucky. And I know they were watching from their dugout thinking they need to be hosting a Super Regional down the road. So LSU and Florida, they both punched their tickets to Omaha. Ironically, last time LSU was in Omaha, they played Florida for the national championship back in 2017, and the Gators got the best of the Tigers. So we'll see if LSU and Florida meet up once again in Omaha. As for some other teams, Tennessee, they will play at least one more game. They downed Southern Miss 8-4 Sunday evening. So the Vols, they're in good shape heading into Game 3 of the Hattiesburg Super Regional. Chase Dolander just went off in that Game 2 on Sunday. He was outstanding. And Southern Miss, they won the rain-delayed Game 1 that resumed Sunday afternoon, jumped out to Tennessee jumped out to a 4-0 lead in Game 2, and they were in control with Dolander doing his thing. So the Vols now 1 win away from Omaha. It is a deciding game today between Southern Miss and Tennessee, depending on what time you're listening to this. So we will see if Tennessee can be that third team to punch their ticket to Omaha. And lastly, another team that is going home is the Alabama Crimson Tide. They lose at the hands of the number 1 Wake Forest Demon Deacons. Wake Forest just been blasting teams all season long. When LSU fell out of the number 1 ranking, Wake Forest climbed up there. They beat the Tide on Sunday 22-5. And Alabama, they earned that number 16 overall national seed. They've just had a roller coaster back into the season with the former head coach, Brad Bohannon, being fired in early May. And look, despite the loss to Wake Forest, a lot of the players backing Jason Jackson as their interim coach, backing him as the long-term answer. One of their players, Andrew Williamson, insisted that if he had athletic director Greg Burns' job, he said the official hire would be easy. Just go ahead and promote Jason Jackson. So Alabama exits the Winston-Salem Super Regional with a final record of 43-21. But what a season it was for Alabama. And I know a lot of people had fun watching them and taking that ride this season. All right, let's get to some other football nuggets. Florida adding a name to their roster over the weekend. The Gators landed a commitment from JUCO edge rusher Quincy Ivory out of East Los Angeles College. He is originally from the state of Texas. Announced his pledge to Florida on social media. He's set to be a summer enrollee in Gainesville, and tweeted out, "First and foremost, want to thank God. Want to thank my family. Give a special shout out to my brothers and my coaches. Never in a million years would I have guessed this would be my journey. I want to thank Coach Napier, Coach Armstrong, and the staff over there at Florida for showing me why Gainesville is where I needed to be." With that being said, Gator Country, let's make history. Now, Ivory played quarterback and defense for Eastern LA last year. On defense, he had 22 tackles, with 8.5 sacks in 10 games played. So we'll see what he can do there for the Gators on their defense. Other news, Texas A&M, they added a speedster to their program over the weekend, picking up a kid formerly from Kentucky, Jordan Anthony, former 4-star athlete out of the state of Mississippi, participated in track and field for Kentucky while appearing in 2 games as a true freshman. And 6'9", 160 pounds, was rated the number 17 athlete in the 2022 recruiting class. So Jordan Anthony going from Kentucky over to Texas A&M. In other football news, Eli Gold, broadcaster for the Alabama Crimson Tide, play-by-play announcer, he shared some great news this week announcing he is officially cancer-free and said he will have some follow-up appointments and scans to monitor his cancer situation, but his focus is on getting strong enough to be back in the booth for the 2023 season. So some good news there for Eli Gold. All right, when we come back, we're going to touch on some recruiting news coming out from over the weekend. That is coming your way in just a second. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. All right, roll along here, Locked On SEC. And before we call the show, we've got some recruiting nuggets we got to jump into as we discussed some of the news coming out from over the weekend, but of course some recruiting stuff happening. So let's jump into it. As running back Chauncey Bowens, he has been committed to Florida since September of last year. And after an official visit this weekend, the 4-star running back out of state of Florida is flipping his commitment to the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia already with an impressive 2024 recruiting class. And Chauncey Bowens now going to Georgia. He is the second running back to commit to the Bulldogs in this class, joining fellow 4-star recruit Dwight Phillips. And Bowens comes from the state of Florida, like we said, considered the number 202 overall prospect in the country, the number 12 running back. So some good news there for Georgia fans. Now, Georgia commit Peyton Woodyard, he is going to take an official visit to USC. He has been committed to Georgia since January and was just on USC's campus the last couple of days. He's a 4-star prospect, the number 69 overall prospect, the number 4 safety in the country. He's also the number 7 player from the state of California. So, look, just because you got a kid committed, can't stop him from taking visits to other schools. So we'll see if Peyton Woodyard holds firm to Georgia or if he maybe flips over to USC. Kentucky football, they added a commitment for the class of 2024 and linebacker Antoine Smith on Sunday. He is runs track and field at his high school in Atlanta. His brother Dion played at Duke a couple of years ago. And Antoine Smith stands at 6'3", 188 pounds. So nice pickup there for Mark Stoops and company, picking up the linebacker in the class of 2024. Some other names to keep an eye on. Andre Evans, he narrowed his list of potential schools down to 5 over the weekend. He's got a couple of SEC schools in there in Alabama, LSU, and Georgia. He's one of the top defensive back prospects in the class of 2024, number 30 corner in the country, according to the 24/7 Sports composite rankings. He's 6 foot tall, 183 pounds, out of the Nashville area. So we'll see if Alabama, Georgia, or LSU gets their hands on him. Meanwhile, Texas A&M, they hosted 3-star quarterback Miles O'Neill over the weekend for an official visit. The Aggies still looking for their first quarterback signing of the class of 2024. They have 6 commitments so far, ranked number 33 class overall. But Miles O'Neill rated the number 53 quarterback in the country in this cycle. Defensive back Cameron Keys, he is set on staying in the SEC. He had a ton of offers from around the country, and he narrowed down his top 4, which includes Kentucky, Mississippi State, Missouri, and Vanderbilt. So he is truly locked on SEC. He's set to visit Kentucky was set to visit Kentucky and Lexington over the weekend. He also had plans to visit Vanderbilt and Missouri. It's also drawn some interest from Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Arkansas. So we'll see where he ends up. But Cameron Keys going to be playing somewhere in the SEC. We just don't know where yet. And P.J. Woodland, another one. He's cut his 2 schools down to 2. He's got LSU and Mississippi State. He's a 4-star corner. He's the number 32 athlete in the country, according to the composite rankings, number 13 player from the state of Mississippi. So we'll see where he ends up picking either LSU or Mississippi State. And there you have it. That is the latest recruiting news going on around the conference. And thank you guys so much for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Keep checking us out throughout this week. Tomorrow on the show, we'll have some special guests joining us throughout this week. So make sure you subscribe. Check out the video version on YouTube or the audio version wherever you get your podcast, Apple, iTunes, Spotify, iHeart, everywhere you find our podcast, Locked On SEC. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. You guys have a great day. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.